Hang on. Forget everything else you see. We finally got a Doctor Who episode. Come on, we finally got a Doctor Who episode. What's up, my know-it-alls? I am blown away. Finally, I got an episode of Doctor Who that feels like an episode of Doctor Who, and that's not. Don't lump me in with some of these other naysayers. I've tried my best to give genuine criticisms of the shows, what I liked, what I didn't like. Last week's episode, 73 Yards, was real confusing for me. Heard a whole bunch of really great, great explanations about what went down. Things that made it make a little more sense to me, but at the same time, still, it's okay that it wasn't the greatest thing. Because now we got Dot and Bubble. So Dot and Bubble is a very interesting episode. It's definitely an allegory talking about social media. Also, it's talking about the kind of the privileged few. It's definitely focusing on sort of a white privileged America type scenario, though it's in the far-flung future. So there's a world called Homeworld, and there's a planet where these privileged rich kids, who are all again represented predominantly Caucasian, who are all doing some sort of data, something or other, Substack, whatever the heck. But they only work 2 hours a day. The rest of the day they spend in this Dot and Bubble scenario, and where you are in the internet. And so even it's very akin to, and this is very on the shoulders or riding on the coattails of Apple's headwear thing, where people were actually wearing it in public. I know that there's been video of people like in them in cars and stuff, and it's sort of crazy. So this takes that idea to its nth degree, and in doing so, it really lays out sort of the problems, the pitfalls. So there's lots of things happening here. All of this has been said to say lots of things are happening here that are there's multiple layers of things being discussed. And because what's funny is, unlike the last 4 or 5 episodes, depending on how you count, it was I felt like those were super preachy. This didn't seem preachy. This episode here is how I have always expected sci-fi to work. By that I mean yes, sci-fi has always had commentary. It's always talked about, the hard subjects, diversity and racism and equality and economy and, government and capitalism and whatever else, all these things, but it does it like this. And so I was really keen to sort of, at first I was like, it's funny, I started the episode, Mrs. Donald and I were watching, and we're like, I'm watching it, and I had this like eye for like, this episode's gonna suck. And then it didn't. Now, people will argue this is a Dr. Light episode. I kind of disagree. I feel more like 73 Yards was a Dr. Light episode. This reminded me more of like Blink, which some people consider to be a Dr. Light episode, but David Tennant's presence and Martha's presence were there most of the time. They were just on this pre-recorded screen thing, whatever else, and you got the general gist of the idea. So this is something similar. Callie Cook plays Lindy Pepperbean, and she is a sort of, she lives in this world, and she's the focal character, okay, right there. And through her eyes, it's funny, the episode gets into itself really quickly, because she's essentially going through the motions. The doctor tries to interrupt her. You've seen that, and she blocks him, and they show the superfluousness of their lives, and it's until she gets to work that all of a sudden Ruby shows up in her thing and starts talking to her, almost like she's surveying her. And so Lindy takes the opportunity. He's like, okay, fine, whatever, blah, blah, blah. She's about halfway through this whole scene. Mrs. Know-It-All looks at me and goes, she's annoying. And I was like, no, I love her. As there's nothing better than a character and it's funny, where it ends up going, I didn't see coming, but I understood 1,000%. Because Lindy Pepperbean is and that's the kind of names they all have, by the way. She's one of those really annoying influencers / whatever type people. And where the kind who are so privileged, it's like on another level, the heights to which they are privileged. Also, the entire cast literally reads like a who's who of like glorified square jaw specimens. It's kind of amazing. And so, and even to the point that at one point, they're dealing with, so Lindy she runs into this one guy, who goes by, where's his name? Hold on a second. Oh, here we go. Ricky September, who's played by Tom Rhys-Harris. And at one point, the Doctor and Ruby are like,
what, Ricky the singer?
That's him.
Oh, nice one.
Hot. Hands off.
and I was like, hey, God, that was funny. I just thought it was super funny. Anyways, yeah. So they're literally, while they're in these bubbles, they walk. And the thing says, go forward, it tells them how to walk, to avoid the obstructions and whatever and get to their end result. People are disappearing from her social media feed. So the Doctor and Ruby and everybody else are trying to figure out. So Ruby's like, well, who do you work with? She's like, I work with these other people. They're like, okay, great. Those 6 people are in the room with you. And she goes, yeah, of course. She's like, well, can you take a look and see if they're there? She goes, what? Like myself? And she's like, yeah.
That's not what we do in fine time. Oh, you are so offensive.
I'm not kidding. Oliver's disappeared and Kipper and no one's heard from Alana.
And so at some point or another, she finally drops the thing. Nobody's in her office. Nobody's there. And immediately to her right, there's one of her coworkers who's being eaten by a giant space slug. I say space slug because we're watching Doctor Who, and frankly, anything with the word space in front of it sounds sci-fi, I guess. It's funny. So she's like, oh my gosh, she tries to leave and she can't walk. And at first I thought to myself, God, that's so stupid. That seems unrealistic. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, if that's the world you lived in, there's a thought process that says if in science that if somebody were to live inside in a bubble, if you train someone to live in a VR world for long enough, and then you took them out into the real world, to them the real world would look wrong. These people grow up in this dot and bubble social media world. So to them, the minute you turn it off in the real world isn't real. So the idea, she's used to mindlessly walking forward because the voice says walk forward, turn left, whatever. And so now all of a sudden, given to her own devices, she can't steer. And then none quite right working. So she manages to fumble through. The Doctor notices that for some reason, her and several others aren't being attacked by these things. And so they finally determine everyone's being eaten in basically alphabetical order. The Doctor determines loosely toward the end that the little dot and bubble AI has gotten so frustrated it hates them and has helped orchestrate and create these things to finish them. At one point, Ricky September, he helps her get to a certain place. He tries to call home to the homeworld. The homeworld's gone. When the screenshot he sees is literally just these slug things on their planet. They never say Earth. You can always assume it's Earth. I don't think it is. They finally escape, and they realize it's the AI. After they were out, he's like, the Doctor's like, because she's in this little bunker area headed to this like a maintenance shaft from when the place was built a long, long time ago. And so it's her. Ricky September's doing his best to save her. He's like, don't worry, I'm gonna get you out of this. It's gonna be great. And so he's putting these codes in. And while that's happening, she has charged her thing. It's on, and they figure out that it's actually the dot that's trying to kill them. And so what happens? So the Doctor's like, you don't understand. If that thing's trying to kill you, it can kill you without those monsters. And sure enough, the thing starts trying to attack her. So Ricky September does his best Luke Skywalker impression, and he sits there with a metal pipe while she finishes putting in the code, and he's whacking the thing, and the thing's about to get her. And she, because she knows, She goes, his last name is such and such, and it begins with a C. She goes, C comes before pepper bean. She turned on him. And I'm like, what? She makes it. Other rich kids are there, and they're sort of starting this like Lord of the Flies of rich kids. Like this one dude who's totally funny. He's like the hiker hipster guy. He's like, yeah, if that was the leader, bro, I'd probably be the one. I'd probably be selected for that. And so he's running this whole thing, and then the doctor's there. Dr. and Millie are there. Dr. and Ruby, rather, are there. And the TARDIS is there. And he tries to explain. He's like, yeah, no, welcome, this and that. And they're like, we're going to go out here. We're going to tame this world. It's going to be this and that. And the doctor's like, what? Hear me out.
Come with us.
Yeah, we helped you escape, didn't we? So we could get you out of here in the blink of an eye.
And they tell him no. He's floored. He's so beside himself. And what I realized is this moment is the moment that I learned who Nshuti's Gatwa's doctor is. He's angry. He's frustrated. He will not exert any kind of will over them. He's allowing them to make this choice, even though it kills him. To the point that at one point he laughs and then he shouts, and it's just like, ah. And they're leaving, and it's so frustrating. I felt frustrated for him. For him. At one point he's like, you're all going to die. Like, he's like, what is wrong with you people? And yeah. So there you go. Now you know. And if knowing's half the battle, you have to be know it all yourself. What's an all index for this episode of Doctor Who? Finally, an episode of Doctor Who, man. I'm here for it. I liked it. I enjoyed it a lot. I'm going to give this episode a solid 9 out of 10. Okay, comment below. Let me know what you thought of the episode. Let's discuss. I felt, again, wasn't super preachy. I was totally into it. I was totally here for it. Would love to talk more. I can't wait. I've now watched it twice because I really needed to redigest it again this morning. But yeah, man, let me know. I would love to hear what you guys think. Do me a big favor though. Right here is the playlist for the entire Doctor Who season so far, if you've missed any. That was last week's episode, 73 Yards, which I thought was rubbish. But, you know, and I've since come around, and you can always subscribe down there. We'll talk again soon. Never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all.